My father demands my 5-bedroom house for my sister, but I told him he shouldn't worry too much about his golden child because she's not even his. I've been reflecting on this for the past few hours and haven't told anyone how I feel because maybe I'm just overreacting. Then I remembered that this space exists where I can come and ask for some advice. So here I am, hoping you can make sense of everything I'm about to tell you because it's a lot. I'm 31 years old, a man, and I work as a real estate developer. When I was 17, my parents kicked me out of the house for stealing, in quotes. I must admit that as a teenager, I wasn't the easiest person to deal with. I'm not going to deny that. Anyway, when I turned 17, they kicked me out, and at the time, I think I knew I deserved it or just wanted to leave, so I didn't argue. Even though they kicked me out for stealing something I didn't steal, I hated the idea of ending up in the system, so I managed on my own for years. I ended up living on the streets and mingling with dangerous people. I felt like I was losing my mind and my purpose, yet somehow I kept going. After a while, I decided that wasn't a way to live. I'd been on the brink of death too many times, and that made me realize there was nothing for someone like me on the other side. I started taking odd jobs until I could afford to rent a room in a commune. My big break came when I was 21, and I got a job at a very fancy restaurant. I was also in the process of detoxing, realizing that the substances I was using were only making my problems worse. It was hard, but I was surviving. One day, someone walked through the door and changed my life. That night, I was serving a woman and her mother. They were incredibly kind and even chatted with me a bit. I had a smooth conversation with the woman, and she kept coming back. Over time, we shared bits of our lives. Her name was Lucy, and she was my age. She wasn't just smart, but also very kind. It was clear she was one of a kind. Lucy became a great friend to me, the first person who believed in me. Motivated by her, I decided to finish school and go to college. Between work and school, I didn't see her much. She was doing very well in her career, but she always made time for a quick coffee. I liked her a lot, but I felt like I wasn't at her level yet. I would never have dared to ask her out knowing we weren't equals at that time, so I decided I would only do it once I was successful. As it turns out, growing up, I was never dumb. My brain just worked differently. I got a lot of help in college and managed to graduate with a very good GPA. I got my first job in real estate development shortly after, and since then, life has been on the up. When I turned 25, I finally had the courage to ask Lucy out. It turns out she'd been interested in me all along and really wanted me to ask her out, but I never did. Lucy and I already had a deep connection, so it didn't take long for us to get married. Shortly after, we had our first child, who is now 3 years old. I'm doing very well and have a senior position at my job. I have everything I ever wanted and am simply happy. I've also had time to process my past trauma. There were moments when I wanted to contact my family, but I just didn't. My father told me to never speak to them again, and so I didn't. Even though I'm successful now and they would probably be proud of me, I couldn't face them. I felt ashamed, you know. I wasn't the easiest child to raise and I caused them pain. I never thought they'd forgive me. It's funny how life works because a few weeks ago, I received a friend request from none other than my father. When I saw his face, I froze, thinking I was dreaming. After accepting his request, he sent me a message. It took me a while to open it, but when I did, it left me crying. He said that, although the past had been difficult, he never stopped thinking about me. He said he's much older now and probably doesn't have much time left. He didn't want me to be lost in this world and wanted to make amends with me. He said everyone in the family also missed me a lot and wanted to reconcile. We talked a bit, catching up on our lives. My sister Sully is now 26 and works as a marketing assistant. She's engaged to be married in a couple of weeks, and Mom and Dad are still the same. They just miss me a lot and have been thinking about me for years. It's been over 10 years since we last spoke, and I don't know, it felt strange. Guys, we messaged back and forth for a while, a few weeks before deciding to meet up. So a few days ago, they came to see me and my wife. The meeting went very well, and they were very happy to see I'd done well and to meet their grandson. My sister loved my house and kept asking my wife about everything related to it. Honestly, I was glad they got along. I wanted that. And everything would have been perfect if not for one small thing. I hope my father was joking when he said this. If he wasn't joking, then I'd be really disappointed in him. So now I question his motives for coming back into my life after so many years. Basically, when my father and I were in my study, he commented on how beautiful the house was. He couldn't believe I owned a 5-bedroom mansion, especially considering how I'd been as a child. Not that it's a mansion, it's just a big house. But hearing that made me proud. I told him it was thanks to Lucy, who gave me a hand when I was trying to get out of the darkness. Now I'm at a point in my life where I feel true peace and am content with everything. He said he loved that I was married and that my sister was getting married soon. Then he commented on how truly rich I was and said it would be nice if my sister had a house like this too. I agreed and said she really liked the house. Then he asked, "What are the chances you'd give her this house?" I was speechless and couldn't respond. Luckily, he laughed as if it were a joke, but I couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. Even after all these years, I know my dad. He says things as a joke, but he means them seriously. Was he really asking me to give my house to his favorite daughter now? I'm sorry if I sound jealous of my sister, but it's true that she's the favorite. Memories of how things used to be are coming back, and I can't go back to that type of relationship with my parents, where I gave up everything for her. I hope my dad was joking because his comment left me confused and somewhat upset. For now, I'll let it slide, but if he brings this up again or shows signs of his old behavior, I won't tolerate it. I'm 31 now, not 17, and I can stand up for myself. Update 1. I think there's still a lot that my family and I need to face and heal from. I've followed your suggestion, and we've started therapy together. So far, we've had 2 sessions, and while they haven't been easy, they've been good. I've also been keeping a very close eye on my family because I have no idea what their true intentions are. The last thing I want is to be used. I've noticed a few things. For instance, my sister has been very friendly with my wife and is always at my house. It doesn't bother me. There's a certain comfort in knowing she wants to keep Lucy company. I work long hours and I worry about leaving her alone at home, especially because she's expecting again. The only thing I don't like is how Sully always takes Lucy shopping and convinces her to buy her new things. Lucy doesn't mind, but I've already warned her. Sally sometimes takes advantage of people's generosity, and Lucy has started to notice this over time. She's begun limiting her outings with her. On the other hand, my dad has been texting and calling me a lot. He's very interested in my life and career. When I was younger, he didn't care what I did in school. He only cared when I got into trouble. I want to believe his interest is genuine, but I'm not sure. He asks a lot of awkward questions about money, but I always dodge them. I haven't given him any money except for specific things, and I don't plan to until I'm sure our relationship isn't just about money. Things have been awkward with my mom, and there's a reason for that. She's the one who doesn't seem happy that I've returned to the family. She always acts strange and cautious around me, as if I might explode at any moment. The only time she talks to me is about my sister's wedding, which she's organizing. In a couple of days, we'll have a rehearsal dinner. My dad asked for it to be held at my house. I wanted to say no, but my wife said it would be rude. So, in a couple of days, I'll be meeting Sully's new in-laws at my house. I don't know. I have a bad feeling about that day. Something doesn't seem right, but I can't figure out what it is. Lucy says I'm nervous and paranoid. I really hope that's the case because I don't want things to go wrong. For now, it seems like everything is falling into place. Little by little, I'm opening up. I'm having the relationship I always wanted with my father, while my sister is always there for my wife. I want that to happen so much. For my 17-year-old self, I want that cold, scared boy to know that everything will be okay, that the pain he went through was worth it. I really need to deal with my tendency to overthink, but it's a work in progress. It's not always easy to make my mind stop imagining the worst-case scenarios. Update 2. Last night was the rehearsal dinner, and it didn't go as expected. Everything started off great, with everyone introducing themselves and chatting. My sister's fiancé seemed like a good guy, although very quiet. My parents also behaved and didn't cause any drama. Everything was going so perfectly that I was waiting for the moment it all fell apart. Maybe my feeling led to what happened next, or maybe it was destined. But suddenly, everything unraveled. It had been days since the last time my dad mentioned giving my house to my sister. My brother-in-law's mother commented on how beautiful the house was and congratulated us. I noticed my sister exchanged a strange look with my dad, but I didn't say anything about it. A few minutes later, my wife and Sully's mother-in-law went to get dessert. That's when my dad asked why we had such a big house. "Are you planning to have more kids?" he asked. I replied, "Maybe in the future." Then he mentioned that my sister wanted to have a very big family and that it would be great if she had a house as big as this. At that moment, I got tired of how he was beating around the bush. I told him to just say what he wanted to say, and he took those words very seriously. He said it would be very brotherly of me to give my sister the house as a wedding gift. I asked if he was joking, like the last time, but he wasn't. He was serious. He truly thought I could just hand over my house to her. Before I could ask him why he would assume that, he said he'd seen how much money I made and that I could easily buy another house without going over budget. I felt the anger I'd worked so hard to keep under control starting to surface. For years, I've never lashed out at anyone. I used to have a very bad temper and would often lose control. Since then, I've developed other ways to handle conflicts. But seeing that I was about to lose it, my dad told me to calm down. He said he was just asking me to do a small thing for my sister. The whole time, my sister, my mom, and her fiancé were watching everything without a hint of surprise on their faces. That's when I realized they had planned it. They did it in front of everyone on purpose so I wouldn't be able to say no. I had no idea what their plan was, but I wasn't going to play along. I let my anger simmer down slowly, then looked at my dad and smiled. I told him, "I don't understand how you're willing to do everything for her when she's not even yours." Even I was surprised by the words that came out of my mouth. That's another side effect of suppressing my anger. I found ways to hurt people that do more damage than fists. He was stunned. After getting over the initial shock, he started yelling at me, asking how I could say something like that. He claimed it wasn't funny and that I was causing trouble for no reason. So he had an issue with me saying something like that, but no problem with what he had just asked of me? His lack of self-awareness was obvious, so I thought it was only fair to stoop to his level. I simply kept smiling without saying another word. Then I looked at my mom. She was glaring at me. She couldn't believe I had uncovered her secret, the same secret for which she blamed me for stealing, so I wouldn't dig further. When I was 17, I saw her talking to a man who wanted to see his child. I thought he was talking about me, so I confronted her. She said he was an ex of a friend who wanted to see his kid and told me to stay out of it. The next day, her silver necklace went missing and, mysteriously, turned up in my room. She accused me of stealing it. My dad was furious and kicked me out of the house without another thought. Years later, I ran into that same man while I was on the streets. I thought he was my dad and reminded him about my mom. Thankfully, he wasn't my dad, but he was my sister's father. He was a man she had an affair with. Apparently, she had paid him to leave. Back to the present, I was ready to spill the whole truth, but my mom immediately started screaming at me. She got everyone out of the house so quickly that I didn't have the chance to say anything else. Before my dad left, I told him, "Get a DNA test, the truth will come out." My wife was in shock over everything that had happened. I had never told anyone that secret, until now. I haven't spoken to them since last night, but I know the messages will start coming soon. I'll keep you updated. Update 3. No matter how much you try to run from the truth, it will always catch up with you. My dad just had to face that harsh reality, and it's breaking his heart. It turns out the daughter he always favored over me isn't even his. I don't feel the slightest bit of pity for him. Watching this drama unfold has honestly been entertaining. After they left the party, my mom insisted I was lying. My dad started thinking about it and decided to get a DNA test. He came to my office as soon as the results came in and opened them in front of me. For the first time in my life, I saw him cry. He was devastated to realize that his sweet girl wasn't even his. The one he loved more than me was the product of a lie. He begged me to tell him everything I knew, and I did. I told him how my mom blamed me because I was close to uncovering the truth and how meeting Sully's biological father was a coincidence. But I could never forget that face. My dad said he was going to do something crazy to my mom, but I was sure he wouldn't. Despite everything, he loved that woman to madness. He was probably still willing to forgive her for this. Those two people were the most miserable I'd ever known, and yet somehow they were happy together. I'd been right not to let them back into my life. They hadn't changed one bit. They were still the same disgusting vultures who saw no value in me. They only cared now because of what I could do for them. I wished them all the misery in the world. Before my dad left, I told him not to come near my house again. I hadn't forgotten how disrespectful he was in my home, and I wasn't going to tolerate that from someone who abandoned me so many years ago. He looked broken, defeated, and didn't even bother to respond. He just left, just like that. I was sure that chapter was finally closed and prepared to focus on other things, until I got that call. The night he came home, my dad physically assaulted my mom. He sent her to the hospital. My sister saw what happened and called the police. And so, now there's a court case that's been unfolding over the past few weeks, and things don't look good for him. He really hurt her, broke several vertebrae. She will recover, but not fully. She'll likely need pain medication for many years. Meanwhile, Sully, angry and betrayed, has decided to cancel her wedding. She wants to find her biological father. She messaged me asking for details, and I gave her what I could remember. She tried to maintain a friendly relationship with my wife, but she ended up blocking her. If there's one thing my wife hates, it's unnecessary drama. If I said I wished them the best, I'd be lying. I hope they're all miserable and get what they deserve. I wish they'd never sought me out in the first place. My life was absolutely fine without them. They tried to manipulate and trick me out of money, but instead, their lives fell apart. That should have been a lesson to them, not to be so fake. Of course, there won't be a next time. Update 4. I've always believed that everything happens for a reason, no matter how complicated it may be. What has happened recently is a big testament to that. I don't know what higher power you believe in, but I know justice always comes. My dad got 3 years in prison for domestic violence. Just like that. My mom provided evidence that he used to emotionally abuse her, which made the case more severe. Additionally, there's been a recent rise in crimes against women in our area, which further complicated his situation. In the months he's been gone, things have been terrible for my mom and sister. Sully searched for her biological father to the point of obsession. She later discovered he had passed away a few years ago. She fell into a deep depression after that and decided she no longer wanted to get married. I don't know what she's up to lately because we blocked her. My mom tried to send me a message a few days ago blaming me for everything that happened. She said Sully wanted nothing to do with her and had cut her off completely. Without her husband, my mother is now struggling financially. I didn't understand how that was even possible. Didn't they have savings? I went through hell for more than 5 years because of her lies. She preferred to see me on the streets rather than risk me exposing the truth. If I had the chance, I would have revealed her lies sooner. I feel no loyalty toward her, as she treated me like garbage when I was a child. If you're a parent dealing with a troubled child, try to understand them instead of crucifying them. I'm not saying you should tolerate bad behavior. There needs to be discipline, but at least treat them like human beings. Cruelty only breeds hatred. Right now, I hate my mother, and if she needed me, I wouldn't go. I've forgiven her, but I'll never forget what she did. On a brighter note, my life continues to move forward. My wife gave birth to a beautiful baby girl a few days ago, and that's what I wanted to share. I suppose I got carried away ranting about my useless family. Well, enough of that. I'm just going to focus on my beautiful family now. Lucy has made me the happiest man in the world by giving me a daughter. I will make sure my children have a much better upbringing than I did. I'll never abandon them, no matter how they turn out, and I'll never favor one over the other. I'm breaking those generational curses, and it's all thanks to the woman I married. I know I haven't talked much about Lucy, but she inspires me every day. She gave me the motivation I needed to leave the past behind and become the man she deserves. I will spend my life making sure she's happy, and I don't care what anyone else thinks. She is my happiness. Lucy will be a wonderful mother, no matter how many children we have. We still have 2 spare rooms, so who knows what the future holds. I have to go now. The baby is crying. Take care. Update 5. I'll start with a brief introduction since it's been a long time between updates, and I want to tell you about my family before getting into the current issue. I haven't had any contact with my sister or my mother all this time, except for what I'll mention at the end. You already know I was never my mother's favorite, as she accused me of stealing to cover up her lies. But now that I've exposed the truth, I think she dislikes me even more, if that's possible. The only thing I know is that she's moved to another state, and that's all I've heard about her. I know she's still dealing with the consequences of what happened with my father, but I haven't been able to confirm it myself, nor do I think I ever will. I'll touch on that more later. As for my sister, it's more of the same, no contact, and I wasn't invited to her wedding. But it's not the same wedding they had planned to hold at my house, nor is it with the same fiancé. She broke up with him shortly after everything happened, especially since she became very depressed and canceled the wedding altogether. Lately, she's been getting help and has found someone new. Now, regarding my father, who is the reason for this update, he has finished serving his sentence, and once he did, it didn't take him long to contact me. Of course, I was quite hesitant to talk to him, but now, in a way, I'm glad I did. To avoid boring you with details, as I know you don't like long updates, he told me that his time in prison helped him reflect. At first, he was angry with me because he thought everything was my fault, but he eventually realized I actually helped him uncover the truth. He also admitted that it was his own fault for making bad decisions, like what he did to my mother, and that his punishment was well-deserved. However, after talking to counselors and others in prison, he came to the conclusion that I might not be his biological son. So, he approached me not only to apologize, but also to propose taking a DNA test. I'm not going to deny that I also had my doubts for a while, but I didn't want to contact him or go through the process of getting the test done while he was still serving his sentence. But since he reached out, I figured it was the perfect time to do it. Not that it would change much in our relationship, but at least I wanted to be sure my kids knew who their grandfather was, especially if there were any hereditary health issues we should be aware of. So, we took the test, and it turns out I'm not his son. Afterward, the man I thought was my father told me we could still maintain a relationship, but I told him this was the perfect opportunity to cut ties completely since there wasn't even a blood connection between us. I know that hit him hard. This man just can't stop receiving bad news, but I had nothing else to say to him. My next step was to contact my sister to do a sibling DNA test. I didn't even know that was possible, but when I looked into it, I found out they can tell you whether you're full siblings or half siblings. The results showed we're half siblings, meaning we share the same mother but not the same father. That would have helped a lot since it would have solved the mystery and spared me from contacting my mother, which I did, but I couldn't get a response from her. She's still very angry with me and refused to tell me who my father is. She also told me not to call her again, which is fine by me. Right now, I'm at a dead end. I can't force her to tell me, and I even think she might not know who he is. At this point, my only options are to hire a private investigator, which I don't think would help much, or drop the matter entirely. Part of me wants to leave it all behind, and another part wants to keep searching. I've talked it over with my wife, and she told me that if I don't want to, I don't have to search. I think that's what I'll do. Maybe in a few years, I'll change my mind and share an update. If that happens, you'll hear from me. For now, I just want to leave it all behind and forget about it. Update 6. Thanks to a comment from a Reddit user who told me about something I didn't know about, I took an ancestry DNA test, which led me to discover who my biological father was. This hasn't changed much since that man is also dead. I've learned a bit about him, and there's nothing to worry about in terms of hereditary diseases, so at least that's something positive to come out of all this. I just wanted to share that, even though it's not much of an update.